All right, here's another cool case I wanted to share of a patient that came into clinic the other day. So this patient's complaining of these nodules on the right upper arm. And what you're seeing here is multiple things. So you're seeing group lesions of dome-shaped pink papulonodules. So if you palpate these, which obviously you can't, but they're pretty firm. And what's interesting is the distribution, right? So they're not completely random, but they're grouped. And in dermatology, a fancy word for that is agminated, which means that they're not randomly distributed, but they're coming together into a group fashion. And that puts you into a differential diagnosis of certain diagnoses, not really that long of a list of things that it can be when you narrow it down. So when looking at an agminated dermatosis or a group dermatosis, you want to consider the individual lesion, and then considering the lesion, consider what could be occurring in an agminated or group fashion. So ignoring the fact that there's multiple interestingly distributed lesions, looking at a specific spot, you see kind of a pink dome-shaped nodule. Really no epidermal change, no scale, no ulceration, no pigment, no blistering, nothing. So you know this is a dermal process. And then when you think about dermal process, you think about, is it inflammatory, neoplastic, or depositional? Inflammatory, to get lesions like this that look so fixed, would be very unusual. Depositional, you could consider a mucinosis depositing here, possibly, maybe amyloids. You can think about like agminated amyloidosis could be considered. Neoplastic, I think, is most likely because these lesions look very chronic. They look fixed and spaced. And so neoplastic doesn't necessarily mean cancerous. It means just the proliferation of some type of cell. And so from there, if you try to predict the type of cell, you can try to predict what's actually causing this agminated dermatosis. So one thing that often looks like this is a neurofibroma. So you get the proliferation of neoplastic neural cells, which gives you a neurofibroma, and those can be agminated. And when those are agminated, that's called segmental neurofibromatosis, which is actually what this is. As you can see, I circled a lesion which I biopsied, and it showed a neurofibroma. So segmental neurofibromatosis, really interesting, very rare entity where a patient develops a postzygotic mutation in neurofibroin NF1 gene, which causes a usually acquired abnormality in grouped lesions of neurofibromas in one area of the skin. It can rarely be associated with passing down the full-fledged neurofibromatosis syndrome to offspring. So it's something where if you diagnose this, you'll want to evaluate this patient with a referral to ophthalmology to look for lesion nodules and consider a referral to genetics. Other neoplastic things, if you think about smooth muscle proliferating here, given the reddish-brown appearance, that would be leiomyomas. Leiomyomas can also be agminated like this. The other thing I thought about, and I had a resident with me, and she brought up, which I thought was a really good case, would be lymphangioma circumscriptum, which has been renamed now to something else, microcystic lymphatic malformation or something like that, where if you can think about these being maybe a little bit more clear, translucent, maybe they're vesicular, it would be a proliferation of lymphatic vessels in that area, the so-called frog spawn appearance. So this is an agminated dermatosis. This is agminated neurofibromatosis. What I thought was interesting when I was looking this up, because there's nothing wrong with having to look stuff up when you see rare things, I found this really cool review in JAD Reviews just a few months ago of agminated skin conditions, where this physician goes through different agminated skin conditions and a nice differential diagnosis for it. And basically the short and sweet is you can break it down to melanocytic or non-melanocytic. And then within those categories, it's any type of tumor or neoplastic process can be grouped. So in the non-melanocytic agminated skin tumors, here we have neurofibromas, which is what it turned out to be. But it could have been leiomyomas, which we considered, and then a bunch of other things that we didn't talk about. So check this paper out if you have some time. I think it's interesting. They have some photos here showing an agminated spitz nevi, which is really interesting. Agminated blue nevi. What are these? Just congenital melanocytic nevi. And these look like possibly lupus miliaris disseminatus facie. Interesting. So something I think is worthwhile to review and an interesting case.